Today, I have the pleasure of meeting with Stefan Lakatos. Stefan is the leading exponent of the Moondog method of drum playing. Close friend and pupil of Moondog, Stefan performs Moondog's music internationally in many countries around the world. Stefan is also one of the few people in the world who knows how to build the Trimba and Dragon's Teeth, two instruments that the Moondog invented himself. For those of you who don't know, Moondog was a composer and street performer, best known as the Viking of Sixth Avenue. Moondog's work was a huge influence on minimalist composers Steve Reich and Philip Glass. And we're going to start off this interview with Stefan giving us a little solo performance on the Trimba.
Yeah, you got it?
Wow, that was fantastic, man. So,
Thank you.
how is a Trimba built? Like, what's it made out of?
It's made out of wood, and it's a kind of large construction, and it's like consisting of two triangular shaped drums. They are not round, they're triangular. So they are kind of long. There are two of them, and then attached on the wood is a cymbal, and I have two cymbals because I like to hear myself, the echo, because the cymbals are there for the echoing effect. It's like a reverb. And then I play with the maraca in my right hand, which keeps the beat and also keeps the 8-note beats because of the seeds inside the maraca. And then I'm using a clave in my left hand as the second mallet, and I play with both the maraca and the mallet on the skin and the rim of the drum, and also sometimes the maraca beats on the clave, and the clave is also beating on the rim.
Wow.
Yeah, that's short how it is, and then there are some other wooden blocks and stuff attached to the trimba that I use for other sound effects.
Because it definitely sounds like in one instrument, almost like an entire percussion ensemble.
Yeah,
Kind of.
that's what I thought when I heard the music of Moondog for the first time. It was like I thought it was a group of percussion players. I didn't notice that it was one instrument, so I didn't pay attention to that. I just thought the rhythm and the beats was very interesting. So after, let's say, about nearly 10 years after I heard the music, then I understood. Somebody told me that it was one instrument, and that was amazing. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And I never heard about a triangular instrument, a drum, so I was very curious to find out how they look like. So when I met Moondog in 1980, that was nearly one of the basic thing that I asked Moondog if he had his drimba with him so that I could see how the instrument sounded and looked like. And he had a small remaining drimba. It was cut off very short, and he played it right there on the floor in front of me, and I was very amazed about how much sounds he could get out of this instrument. It was so beautiful.
Because it really does have an incredible sound. And also in recordings, it functions very well as an ensemble instrument as well.
Yeah, it's not only keeping the beat of his music. It's more than keeping the beat. It's an ad lib thing. At the same time, it has a special Moondog. How to say his beat. What I was playing here, for example, it was a 7/4 beat. So he had a special pattern on every beat that he wrote music on. He had a special pattern. And these are the basic patterns that when you're playing on this instrument and playing Moondog music, you had to be aware of that.
And are those patterns these so-called snake time patterns?
Yeah, I think he coined all his beats snake time. Mostly it was the 5/4 and the 7/4, but as I also understand, he also called everything that he made a snake time.
So it's more of just his little kind of personal, like, touch to a beat rather than like a terminology for like a specific kind of time signature or rhythmic pattern.
Yeah, mostly it was the 5/4 because it had a snaky feeling in it because it's not even and it's sort of like there is a snake called a sidewinder, I think, and it's like going at the side, so it's a little slippery on one direction, so to speak.
Yeah. And you're one of
So
the few people who actually knows how to build a chimba. Can you describe that process a little bit for us?
I it's not that easy because you have to experiment. And Moondog he told me the basic stuff, and to build this instrument you need a lot of patience, and you need also a lot of skill, and you need machines, and you need money because it was not cheap to make it. So it's very difficult because of the measurement and construction in itself. It's not you cannot do it if you're not professional. So I had to hire somebody to make it, and also Moondog made also the same way. He had a professional that made it for him.
Wow. So how did you meet Moondog?
I met Moondog in 1980. I was on Interrail card in Europe, and I knew that he was in a town in Germany called Ohr-Erkenschwick. And I found an address on one LP called Heart Songs. There was an address, and when I saw this address, I was thinking, maybe I should write him, drop him a line, and tell him that I liked his music. But I also wanted to ask him because I wanted to have the old recordings, which was very difficult already in the 80s to get because they were sold out and extinct from the market, so you couldn't buy them mostly secondhand or so on auctions and stuff. So I mainly asked him for these recordings if he could at least make a cassette for me of these recordings. So then I wrote to him and he answered. It took quite a while before they answered. It took like 2 or 3 months, and then I finally got a letter. And there was a head on the letter, so there was a telephone number written. So when I was in Cologne, I called from a telephone booth and I talked to him over the phone, and I made an appointment with him for an interview. And I had some tape recorder with me, and I went to his house and stayed in his house for nearly 3 days.
Oh wow.
And I made a long interview with him. At that time, I didn't know him. I didn't know how he looked like. I didn't know that he was into this Viking image things in those days. I had no idea. I was mainly interested in his music, and I think that made him more open towards me. I think because somebody was interested in his music, not of his personal history. Because I didn't know anything about it. I was just curious about the music.
Yeah, because I know a lot of times his kind of image and like kind of outlandish kind of way of dressing overshadow just like the his compositional abilities. Like I
You are
think
to Yeah, you're totally right about that. I never heard about any composer nearly who was more famous for his image than from his music, and that's very sad because he has written so much nice music.
like the one album of his that kind of really like sticks out in my mind. That's like proof that he wasn't just a guy who dressed up like a Viking on the street. Was that 1969 Columbia album of his, that self-titled release?
Yeah, that was his first possibility to make a recording with his orchestral music. And to me, okay, he's not a personally, I find Moondog not a symphonic writer, but on that album, he's writing symphonic music, but he didn't write symphonies that lasted for like half an hour or 15 minutes or so. They were called minisim. And that's a typical Moondog thing to be very, how do you say, concentrated and focused on the main thing of his music. He didn't want to make ornaments and go from here to there and back and go away and come back and so on. He wanted to have a sort of like a focused short piece which he could express what he wanted to express without having any ornaments.
I definitely kind of had a very short and to the point type of writing style to him.
No,
Maybe that's not the best wording to
I didn't
describe it.
I didn't really understand the question. Can you ask it again?
Uh, I was just like commenting that like he definitely had that kind of very like focused sort of writing where he didn't like to meander in different kind of themes or let one theme go on for too long. He's definitely
Yeah,
very like focused.
yes. I mean, his music is not minimalist music, what we know it, what we call minimalist music. It's not, because it's polyphonic. Most of these famous minimalist writers, they are sort of like more like a horizontal music. It's like from A to B or C and D, yeah. But Moondog is from A, and then comes another voice, and then come the next voice, and the next voice, and then the music is full when all the voices are in, and the listener has to make up this music in his head. So this is what I say that in his music is mind music. It's what's happening to the listener's mind when you hear it. It grabs you, and uh, you really have to focus. It takes you. It wants you to listen, and while you're listening, you go from one voice to the next, and next time you listen, you go from that voice to the next voice, and you can't you sort of like get a picture of his music, and you can look visually nearly on which voice you want to follow at the moment.
Yeah, he definitely also had a very extensive use of counterpoint as well. I was wondering, did he ever comment on like what he thought of like the minimalist composers like Steve Reich and Philip Glass, who were very big kind of fans of him and heavily influenced by his style?
Yeah, he didn't want to be associated with the minimalist movement because he said to me that no, my music is not minimalistic. They probably got inspiration because of something, but the minimalists, I think mainly they were inspired by the music from Indonesia. It's the gamelan music, this kind of mathematical patterns, yeah, that is, some patterns are slow, and then there is a faster pattern on the above that pattern, and so on and so on. So it's not really what Mundo was into. His music was more counterpointal, as you said. So he didn't want to consider himself as a minimalist composer at all.
Hmm. Were you ever able to like play with Moondog on any of his recordings?
Yeah, we made yeah, the first attempt was just for fun. We made some recording in the studio here in Stockholm when he was staying with me in 1981. We had an amateur choir, Moondog choir, which was singing his rounds. You know those, I think, the madrigals, he called it. And we made some recordings in a studio. And then later in 1986, we made an album with a bracelli, which is consisting of two violas, two celli, and one double bass and percussion. And he had a whole catalog of music written for this setting. because he said that this violas and the cello and the contrabass, the double bass, this music was easy to write counterpoint canon music. The violin, he said, was too high for his purpose. He didn't like it so much. It was too high in range. He didn't like it. He liked this bass, this more darker sound, so to speak, mysterious darker sound. So we made an album here, the Bercelli album, the first one on the vinyl, and then I played some concert with him. I was there in Paris, 1982, and we made concerts here in Sweden as well with the Bercelli group, and also the saxophone band, the Sax Packs music that was released on record more later, much later, and yeah, it was. I mean, what I have learned about music, I learned by playing his music. So what I learned is from experience of his way of attitude and sound of his music. So I love this instrument, the trimba, very much because I think without this instrument, it's not the same, and it's like a voice of Moondog. This trimba, it's really connected to his music. That's very fantastic, I think.
It's definitely one of like the instruments that really gives a lot of his music a very unique sound that you don't really get to hear in kind of any other composer.
No, that's
Now,
totally his own stuff. Very unique.
now, what were you doing before you met Moondog? Like, were you a musician or?
Yeah, I was not a musician, but had always been interested in music. But I was an artist, a painter, and I was in sort of like a painting academy or what you call it in Sweden. And after that, when I met Moondog, I left my paintings and started to make music. And I think music for me, as my person, I'm a very social person, and I like to hang around with other people, and I like to communicate with people. So for me, it was much more fun to play music together with people than to stay in an art studio all by myself and look into the white canvas.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. I think one of the big, great things about music is just how it can just help you meet so many other like great and interesting people.
Yes, even if maybe you don't have personal connection to them, maybe you don't have anything else in common, but when you sit on the stage and you play with them and you have a communication that is fitting, then it's fantastic. I have been playing with musicians, like 5 musicians in Holland, for example, the Califax Reed Ensemble. And it's like, for me, it's like playing with one person because they're so tight and they are so communicative. They are so sensitive to what I am doing. And when they are sensitive to what I'm doing, then I get sensitive what they are doing. So it's a very nice, very beautiful experience.
I know there's definitely a great back and forth with a lot of like music playing together, especially if it's very improvisational based.
Yeah, but this music is not improvisation. There is nothing about the improvisation in Moondog music. Absolutely not. Because everything is written and you have to play each note as it is written, or else it's not Moondog anymore.
Now, I was wondering because I know in your concerts with Wolfgang Sellner, you'll often use kind of loop pedals to kind of create a big symphonic sound. Can you describe that a little bit?
I played. There's a cello player in Bochum who brought me to Germany for the first time. I played with the Bochum Symphonic. His name is Wolfgang Sellner. He is the first cello player in the Bochum Symphonic Orchestra, and he bought such a machine, and so he could overdub himself. And so we made a piece that was written for him called the Tamagotchi. It's for 9 celli, but we played with 6 because the 9 is a little bit too much. But for 6 it works. And he also made some other experiments with this, but it's mainly just an overdubbing. It's not has nothing to do with house music or something like this. It's basic. Moondog also made overdubbings on recordings and so on.
All right, gotcha. Can you describe the time you played at Carnegie Hall?
Yeah, the time I played in the Carnegie Hall, I was invited by Louis Nicolia and what's his name, Keita Fukushima, and I was invited to play some lullabies by Moondog. They called it a lullaby. I think they called it the whole event because they made a performance of an American composer. I forgot his name. He's located in California, I think, and he wrote a lullaby. And they thought about Moondog as well because he wrote a piece called Lullaby, but we didn't play that one. But we played Frog Bog and some other pieces which were sort of like had the same mode or something like this. And it was a great experience because it was really the first time I was invited to play with the musicians in America. And the first time I went there and I had to play at the Carnegie Hall, it was a very big event for me, very, very big. And it was wonderful. I forgot the other musicians. They were a Japanese piano player and an organist and some other musicians. I forgot really what it was. But it was really, really beautiful. I was really happy for them to invite me. I was very thankful and honored to do this.
Wow, that, that's really incredible. Were you involved with the documentary on Moondog, The Viking of Sixth Avenue?
Yes, Holly Elson connected with me, I think, in a very early stage of this documentary filming. And she approached me and visited me when I stayed in Germany, and she was there for 3 or 4 days, and she made a long interview with me, and I told her a lot of things. I was not really at that time I was inexperienced of doing such a thing in front of a camera, so it was kind of a tense tension there. It was not really. I didn't really felt free. I didn't know really what to say sometimes and so on. But she made a lot. I think she got the main thing that what I said. I think she got all this stuff. And yeah, she didn't know much about Moondog either. She didn't really know exactly what to ask me about.
Mm.
But I saw some parts of what she has done with others, and I see that she's a very talented filmmaker and very sensitive. And I think she's really the one that could make this documentary an interesting and beautiful documentary film. Hmm.
Yeah, gotcha. So if people wanted to watch that documentary, where should they go?
I don't know when the film is ready. I have no idea. She tries to get it ready, and I thought it would be ready this last year, but unfortunately it's not, and I don't know any dates about it. And she tries, of course, to sell the film to there are different documentary festivals around the world, with the documentary film festivals around the world, and also to television stations and so on. So I don't know how successful she is with this. I don't know this.
All right, so right now it's just kind of in like the intermediate stage a little bit. Where they're just trying to
Yeah,
see if who can broadcast it and whatnot.
yeah, that's what it is. And then and after she has been to my place, she found so many people in New York that had much more to tell about the time in New York than I had, and I didn't know that these people were around even. So I didn't know that when she met me, and she didn't know either. So I'm so curious about this film to see what she have achieved and what people she has interviewed. I would really, really like it. And I asked her also, and I said to her that please make this film about his music and not so much about his as a image. That would be so great to have something with a lot of music in it, so that the music is in front. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's again, he's definitely one of those type of people where it's kind of very kind of almost seemingly outlandish image did sort of overshadow for like a lot of people, like just the amazing music he's created. But I think recently, with the advent of the internet, his music is definitely reaching a new audience now.
Yeah, I think so, and I hope that they understand his music as well when they hear it. So because there is I heard some groups or musicians that that they don't understand his music. They think they can just play his melody and do some solos and everything, and then suddenly it becomes just mainstream. And I find it so sad because this music is so unique and is so special in itself. If you play his music and really listen to what possibilities it have, and keep the magic feeling of his music, then it sounds like Moondog. But if you don't do that, then it becomes mainstream. And Moondog was definitely not a composer who wanted to become mainstream. He tried to live in the past and the present, the future or whatever it is. It was to be heard in the past feeling of his music, if you understand. It's like you go to the medieval, but you see the future in it.
So you think a lot of people are playing like a almost watered down version of a lot of his work?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Like like oh, like they're adding kind of more like of their own elements instead of just playing the music like it should be like kind of just straight on paper as like you would play, for example, a Bach symphony.
Yes, they should really do that. That's what exactly they should do. And then they should really feel where is the moondog in it? Where is the moondog feeling? Yeah.
Yeah. So
You said something in the question that I wanted to hang on, but I forgot. Maybe you have it written down, the question?
oh you
The
said
one
like
you just asked.
oh the one I just asked. I was just wondering like so you think a lot of people are doing like a watered down version of Moondog and like
Oh
or
yeah.
they're trying to kind of modernize it, but like you think Moondog's music is the kind of music that shouldn't really be modernized. It should just be like stay where it is, kind of like an unedited kind of expression of who he was.
Absolutely, you're totally right. And what I want to say is that when he was alive, he said to me that he didn't like when he heard the word translation, because there is nothing to translate in my music. It's in the listener's mind what's happening when you play exactly how I have written it.
Oh wow,
Hmm.
that's that's very interesting because so he was like a composer who didn't really want his music to be kind of interpreted that like differences in interpretation that much. He just wanted it to be played like the way he kind of heard it.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, if you're a good musician, you anyway put your person in your way or expression in your piano playing or violin playing or whatever you do. You have your personal personality style or your mood or whatever it is. So that comes natural. You need not attach something from our times that is some surfaced stuff, like some electronic instruments or something, just to think that I could do this strange electronic thing with this music because it sounds good to me
Yeah.
now and in these days and so on. Moondog was not a person that wanted to live in our times. He was in the past.
Hmm.
And and this music is so special in itself. And when you really appreciate it, you have come very far. And it's very good for you to listen to it
Hmm.
for a longer time. In the long run, it's good to hear this kind of music, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you in a sense, but what would you think about people who like would, for example, I know in like the genre of electronic music, there's a lot of time people who kind of sample different instrumentals and then kind of change them. And I
Mm.
have heard a couple times where people have sampled different Moondog compositions and done kind of more like electronic-y things. What do you think of that?
I think it's horrible, really horrible, because that's not what he wanted, and it's not expressing anything that has to do with Moondog. They could have taken anything else. They could have written their own music. It would have been much better. They could have taken something. But today is like you can with all these machines you can download and take anything you want, and then you have some few seconds of some drum beats or whatever from other artists, and then you call it, yeah, this is Moondog. Yeah, but it is not. It's a mishmash of things, and I think that's very sad, and I think Moondog would have been very, very upset about this, and I find it strange. It's horrible.
So, going off that, what do you think of a lot of like today's popular music? I know your kind of home country of Sweden is known for being very much like a hub of a lot of like commercial pop songwriting, such as Max Martin. What do you think of that?
No, I'm not interested in these things on myself. I like independent musicians. I like all styles of music. I listen to a lot of different stuff, but not so much of the new things. I think most of this mainstream stuff, it's dance music. It's made for for kids on the dance floor and kids for the teenagers or whatever it is. I don't understand this music. I rather listening to classical music or to Frank Zappa, Captain Beefheart, and this kind of psychedelia from the 60s. And I like to listen to jazz like Coltrane, Charlie Parker, and Duke Ellington or Dollar Brand or Art Ensemble of Chicago or Sun Ra and stuff like this.
Wow. I mean, I know, going off Charlie Parker, I know, didn't Moondog once even was able to meet Charlie Parker, and didn't they almost record together?
Yeah, they tried to make some things together, but it didn't happen because the next thing Moondog heard was that Charlie Parker died. But the thing was that Charlie Parker even asked Moondog to teach him how to write classical compositions.
Mm.
How do I write music in the classical way? And you know, Moondog, it's totally amazing. You know, we throw away the image now. We talk about how fantastic his composition is. You can imagine a blind person. He goes to the blind school and he has to learn the language of the Braille, and then he has to learn the music writing of the Braille, which took him about 3 years, and he hated it. And he said, "If but I have to do it. If I don't do it, I will not be able to compose because I have to write down my music. I cannot keep my music in my head and then tell somebody else to write it down. I have to do it on my own." So that's what he learned. And then the next thing was that he had to write his music without having an instrument around. That's very amazing. He kept
Wow.
the music inside his head before he wrote it down on this piece of papers. And on this piece of paper, there was a limit on how many notes you could write on each page. So he couldn't afford to make mistakes when he wrote down the pieces on this piece of paper because he was poor. He couldn't afford to buy big amount of paper. And you cannot erase things with an eraser or something when you write in Braille because when you have written it once, it's there. So then you have to brush it over or something like this and go on with it. But mainly he wrote everything in his head and then down on the paper. Yeah,
Oh, that's
and
incredible.
that's
That's
incredible.
insane.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
just like the mind-blowing thing about that is like just being able to compose without the instruments in front of you is something that I would just find like just immensely challenging.
Yes, that's Mozart, you know, and Haydn and Beethoven. They were writing like that. They had it in their head. Beethoven maybe not, but because he was a piano player. But Mozart, he could compose
Well,
not trains, but in what you call this with the horse riding went up to Vienna when he was in Vienna, and then he went to Prague, and then he went to Italy, and he could sit and write the music on the way, on the road.
I mean,
That's incredible.
Beethoven, later Beethoven, when he was deaf, would definitely have like fit into that because he couldn't really hear the other instruments or probably even his piano playing very
Yeah,
well at that point.
yeah, that's true.
Also, one thing I kind of found very interesting was when you were naming music you listen to now. I noticed you said Frank Zappa. There's
Hmm.
another person whose image a lot of the time overshadows just like the immense beauty of his music.
Yeah, to some extent probably because but no, not really because the people went really to his concert to hear his music. So that's not really. He was not really an image. It was I think it was a lot much more has to do with his music
Yeah.
and his orchestras he played with, his musicians that he chose to play with, and so on. And then he was composing in later years with his sample machine. What was it called? There was one of those bigger electronic devices that he used. I forgot it. He made a lot of music with this instrument without having other musicians around. So he was composing directly in this machine. I forgot the music. This
Oh, I can. I think it was a Fairlight.
Synclavier,
Oh,
Synclavier.
Sinclair. That's it. I was thinking of the Zampler. I think that was something that Peter Gabriel used often. I mean, Zappa, you're right. It was more like his image and who he was kind of conflicted. I read his autobiography recently, and it mentioned that he was definitely one of those kind of big counterculture people and like the counterculture really hailed him as a hero. But even though he
Yes.
himself in private interviews and just talking, he despised like the counterculture and that kind of cultural movement, even though he was considered one of their biggest
Hmm.
heroes. He was a very
Yes.
interesting man in that way, kind of full of those kind of contradictions.
Yeah, but he made also a lot of nice compositions. Very, very good. He was melodious. And I mean, you cannot connect Moondog with Frank Zappa, but I think Moondog had visions. He had musical themes in his head, and I think Frank Zappa had all these themes in his head. They were coming to him in dreams or when he did something else. Some themes just popped up from nowhere, and so I think that's the sign of a good composer. Because okay, I love melodies myself, so maybe I'm sensitive to that. Mm.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Also, the thing that I think definitely marks Moondog is his kind of range of compositions as well. Like he could definitely write in like kind of different styles, but you could still tell it was still him.
Yes, that's amazing. And he didn't care about style. He said to me that I can write music in any style, and that he proved he could do that. And and as you said, you can really hear it's Moondog. I don't know what it is, but there is some special mood in it. And this is you should really keep those things in the future to play his music that way, I think.
Because like a lot of like for example that like, stuff like Moondog's Lament is very kind of orchestral, while other of his pieces even drift into like that a little bit
Hmm.
more of like the ambient realm or atmospheric realm. I know there was that one 25-minute piece he did. I'm forgetting the name that I listened to recently, and it was very like kind of ambient sounding, and I was like, wow, this is just. I would not expect this to come from the same composer that's done kind of the more
Hmm.
percussive, like tremolo type music that he was also known for.
Yes, you can compare the saxophone pieces and with the beautiful harp piece at the end of the Madrigal album, for example. It's the same composer, and it's a totally different mode. It's very, very beautiful. It's so sensitive. It's so simple. The melody is so simple, but in the simplicity, there is a great skill. It's very difficult to write simple things. It's more difficult than to write things that are more complex, I think.
So I'm curious, have you ever composed your own pieces?
No, but I had some ideas, and Moondog he wrote down some of those small things, but I don't think he ever did something with it. But I remember that I had some. I was improvising on my flute, and I played some improvised melodies. Oh, Stefan, there's a nice melody there. You can give it to me. I can write a canon of it.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
but I have made some drum compositions, but I did those in the studio. So I was improvising, and then I was listening to what I have recorded. And nowadays, with modern technology, you can say, but I don't like these 2 bars. You can just cut them off, like that. So I compose it afterwards, like this. Yeah.
Yeah, like very much like a studio creation kind of.
Yeah, something mixed. It's the ideas comes, and then you listen to it and say, I don't like this idea. Take these 3 bars away and let the drum come in again after 6 bars and stuff like this. Yeah, such things I made.
Gotcha. So, how does it feel to really be one of like the few people who's like kind of exposing a very authentic version of kind of Moondog sound?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, when I started to get into when I got into his music and knew him as a person, as a composer, as a friend, and suddenly I tried to play his instrument and I got involved, and suddenly I was finding myself inside his music. That was incredible, I tell you, to feel that you're a part of his music and not only a listener anymore. Now I can be inside the music, and I learned so much from that. You can't believe it. I learned so much from it.
Yeah, I mean that must have been quite an experience to go from like a fan of his music and then one day you're just like as you said with like the flute melody, you're just actively collaborating with him.
Yes, yeah, that was amazing. I'm very thankful for the opportunity I had when I met him to do these things. I'm really grateful for that. I never regret it, and it's a big part of my life still. And now there is so much music that we have found in the Braille that has never been written out. And there are really gems there, very, very nice piano pieces. And my friend in Germany, Wolfgang Gnida, he has learned the method of reading this Braille compositions, how to read it, and he has translated so many
Wow.
pieces. We have nearly the complete piano book number 4 and the complete piano book number 5, and we have. I think he had completed all madrigals, and I think in all, when I try to count them, they are about 560 songs
Oh
in
my
this.
God, I mean, so there's just like, even though he's already very prolific, there's just like a massive archive of stuff that just has never been played before.
Yes, yes, there are
My
so much
God.
stuff. And that's why I said that we must expose everything of this. We must record everything. We must play this music because it's new things popping up and it's so beautiful, one after the other. And these madrigals, for example, there are nearly two madrigals that are similar. No, they are so different.
Oh man.
Every little thing has every little piece he's written has a special thing in it. I cannot describe it. It's just that it doesn't sound
Oh,
like anything
wow.
else.
So like, if you were to like make a guess, how many compositions did Moondog complete in his lifetime?
Or that I cannot say. That I don't know. But there is definitely thousands of them.
Oh wow, that's
Because
incredible.
every piano book is about 25 pieces in each, and there is 5 completed books. There is 6 ambideck pieces, and they are in several movements as well. And all the saxophone music are in 3 movements. So if you written 25 saxophone pieces, that's about 75 melodies,
Oh
75
man.
pieces. So you can just add up, and I don't know. It's an amazingly big amount.
What was his creative process like? Like, how was he able to compose this amount of pieces, and not just number of pieces, but in completely different forms? Like, as you were saying, like he has all these saxophone pieces, all these kind of orchestral pieces, all these piano pieces. Like, how is he able to really just get all those ideas on paper like that?
Yeah, as I said, I think when you are really a dedicated composer and a sensitive person as he was, and I think sometimes I think this melodies and everything it came up when he was sleeping. It was like a dream. It's dream music. It comes from nowhere. It's just there, you know. And to me, it looks like it's totally endless ability, endless amount of melodies you can create. There is no limits. And in his case, it was just I think that it just came to him, and he also invented forms. There are forms in his music. I cannot describe them in words like that, but there are so many forms, and sometimes he was into one form, and then he worked on many different pieces inside this form. And I think when you have that, you know, one gets to the next. You know, one piece leads to the next. So that's what it is. You know, it's like you're writing a book and you don't know really the end of the book until you're there, because you have to travel all the way from the first page to page 900.
Oh wow, that's incredible. So, again, thank you so much for coming. Are there any closing statements you'd like to make? Are you having any upcoming concert tours?
Yeah, I for the moment I have only one performance with piano music here in Sweden in May this year. But before that, I will play with a very nice French composer and songwriter. His name is Stefan, and he also recorded with Moondog a very long time ago. Moondog wrote an arrangement of how do you say, a traditional song from Switzerland, and he gave this to Stefan Eicher to record it, and it's really beautiful. This is also the first, nearly the one and only piece I heard that Moondog wrote an arrangement of another composer's music. Nobody knows who composed this piece in the beginning, but it has a melody, and his version, he made it him like it was his own composition, yeah. And Stefan Eicher added his style of singing to it, so it became suddenly his composition as well. Because it's really really a nice piece, and we are going to perform. He has a group called the Polstergruppe, and I met him this summer, and I was invited to join them. So we are singing the Coffee Bean song, and then I have two solos, and then I join in on some other pieces that he has written, and or the other musicians have written. I don't know really, but it's kind of a laid back concert, you can say. The
Oh
audience
wow.
are supposed to lie down on the floor, and we are performing for over an hour or so.
Oh wow.
Pe- People can
When
fall asleep if they like.
when and where is that? Can you repeat that?
We will play in Bern in the 21st of January in a place called the Dampfzentrale. Dampfzentrale Bern, 21st of January.
All right. Also, will you ever be performing in the United States again, or no?
This is a very difficult issue today. I don't know if you in America knows about these things, but you see, if you're a European and want to enter America to do something that has to do with music, you have to have a work permission. And you have to go through a lot of machinery of bureaucracy to get there, and it costs a lot of money. It was not like that before. Something started, let's say, 4 years ago, I think it started, and I think it was the lawyer lobby in America that started this so
Ah.
they could have something to earn money. So it's very difficult. And I saw a hearing on a videotape from a hearing with the American embassy here in Sweden where they explained how this works and everything. And I got a very, very bad feeling when I saw this. It was really bad. They said, you can go to America and you can go and play on the bar. But, if you do that, we can find it out on Facebook that you have been playing there. And then you are not allowed to come back to America again if you did this. It's
That
illegal. Blah,
that's
blah, blah.
ridiculous.
That's totally
It's definitely
ridiculous.
like kind of very limiting for people like such as yourself who want to kind of spread their
Yes.
music around the world.
Yes, it has to do with money. There's somebody who wants to earn money on musicians. Again, somebody who wants to earn money on musicians.
Good. Well, thanks again, Stefan, for joining me today. If you want to listen to
Thank you.
Moondog's music, go to moondogscorner.com. You can search that up. Also, much of Moondog's music can also be listened to on YouTube as well. All right, thanks again, Stefan.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Very nice. It was an honor to speak with you.
It was an honor and a privilege.
Thank you.